Hi there, this video is for anyone who wants to 1. Prevent arbitrary interference from authoritarian rule, 2. Stand up for your rights, 3. Rebalance the injustice of the financial system and free yourself from debt, and 4. Expand your perception of what law, money and debt is and how it affects your life. Law is by consent. My intention. This presentation is for the benefit of all beings. It's to help you drive forward more quickly by giving you the language and the confidence you need to stand in your power and claim sovereignty over your own self, as is your birthright. It ties together many sources of information into a coherent document which can be easily accessed and revisited for reference. I've demonstrated an easy system to relieve yourself from debt based on much information which I've learned from books, online resources and other freedom fighters. Whilst I have successfully written off much tax, debt, loans, etc. using a conditional acceptance, combined with the legal name fraud argument, it has not been a walk in the park. It is a commitment to your rights and your freedom, and you are required to work for it. It's a life choice, and you must decide what level you will accept or tolerate the system and the demands made upon you, and how far you choose to step away from it. Please check out these references for a broader view and a more solid foundation to work from. Contract and consent. Corporate contracts. A corporate contract I describe as being one where you believe you have a contract, such as a mobile phone contract, with a corporation like Vodafone, for example. This is not a lawful or binding contract because the system can only operate through your legal name, which you were given without your knowing, and you never received a full disclosure about that fact. In their system, you are reduced to being a corporation with which they are contracting or doing business. The legal system operates on an assumption of your status and your implied consent. By accepting and using the legal name, albeit unwittingly, you appear to be agreeing to your reduced corporate status. Contract law is an aspect of law which the legal system uses. It relates to people and corporations who are engaging in business and need to form contracts, to have security when dealing with each other, and to formalize their agreements so that everyone knows we are all agreed. We lay out our terms and conditions, and if necessary we negotiate to bring about a mutually beneficial agreement with each other, and then we each deliver exactly what we agreed upon to fulfill our contractual obligations. Contract law. Valid contract. In law, there are very specific rules which are followed that determine whether or not a contract is valid. A valid contract is only made when the following criteria are met. Valuable consideration. Both parties have something of value to offer or to gain. Full disclosure of terms and conditions. All expectations of delivery on a contract have been laid out in full prior to agreement being reached. Meeting of the minds. Both parties have been seen to agree. Trusts. Trust law. Equity and trust. Equity and trust is an aspect of law used by the legal system. It is sometimes referred to as admiralty law, and it relates to people who have assets which they want to protect. I believe trusts were used and developed in the days of the old Admiralty, when trading overseas between countries became big business, i.e. engaging in commerce. Goods and valuable assets could be moved over the oceans, being fully protected under Admiralty law relating to seas and ships, cargo and trading. Equity and trust is also concerned with being fair and equitable, about doing the right thing for all the parties involved, bringing about a balance for all concerned. In a trust, there is also a title and a role to play. Trust components. A trust is usually made of 3 roles. The trustee. This is the one who is responsible and liable for the equity or the value in the trust. The executor. The one who directs or says what happens in the trust. And the beneficiary. The one who benefits from the equity or the value in the trust. The birth certificate is a trust or a bond. It is created when the registry office receives notification from the parent that a child is to be registered. It's normally thought to be necessary by law for a child to be registered. This is the first stage of a child having been given to the system. The parent receives a certificate much like a warehouse receipt, and the state considers itself to have received goods. The informant, the father, is noted on the certificate or the receipt. The father has unwittingly notified the office of lost property. The old-style birth certificates are printed in red ink, have wavy lines inside of a rectangular box in which the name of the child is printed in black ink, indicating deceased. This also indicates admiralty jurisdiction in symbolism and relates to admiralty law, the law of equity and trusts. The dead is in a box on the water, symbolising a burial at sea. Look, I know it sounds obscure, but just stick with it for a minute. Lost at sea? Check out Setukay v Act 1666 on legislation.gov. The Act was brought in, perhaps under guise, to deal with many souls whom had been lost in the plague and then the Great Fire of London. It relates to property having been left or lost. The property is held in trust by the Crown, and where the property has not been claimed by the living man or woman within a period of 7 years, that property becomes property owned by the Crown. When a child receives a birth certificate, the implicit symbols indicate the admiralty jurisdiction of law. It indicates that the child has been received as goods, lost at sea, and if he does not claim back his property himself, by age 7, he is taken as property of the Crown. Right, by now you're probably thinking this is absolutely nuts. You can be forgiven for thinking that. I've cracked my head open to get my synapses to fully connect with what is going on here in this scam, essentially, and to really see what is going on behind the curtain. Stick with it. A picture emerges as you put the pieces together into the grand jigsaw. Carry on doing your own research and see this presentation right through and watch it a couple of times. Understanding trusts. When you are given a birth certificate, a trust has been arranged and you have received a title. This falls under admiralty law. On the one hand, you can be seen to be the beneficiary in that trust, and you become entitled to benefits and privileges within the trust, e.g. state benefits, welfare, etc. Sounds like a good thing. But the reverse side of the coin is that by attending court and answering to the legal name, believing that you are liable for parking fines, debts, utilities, etc., you allow them to assume you to be the liable person in the trust arrangement, the trustee. The Crown takes the roles of the executor and the beneficiary because your property, was not claimed back within 7 years of the informant notifying the state of the birth, the lost property. By attending a court without clarifying your status, knowing who you are, why you are there, and being able to stand on your authority, you leave yourself open to the court's assumptions about those very facts. To assume makes an ass out of you and me. Because the court is operating a business, it will act in its own interest unless you are able to clarify your status and reasons for attending. Remember, you do not belong in a court as a man or a woman unless you yourself have a claim against another or you have caused injury, harm or loss to another man, woman or child. The Walking Dead. When we consider that titles and status are connected and have subtle meanings within the legal system which we are never informed about, when we look at subtle signs and symbols and examine and compare them, when we scrutinise areas of law which we are never introduced to in the lower levels of education, and when we really look beyond our nose end and open our eyes again, we begin to see that something quite odd is apparent. If you look at your bank card, passport, driving license, or other state-issued official document, you will see your all-capital letter name. Again, if you look at any gravestone, you will see the name is always capital letters. See Capitis Diminutio Maxima, a further slide in this presentation. These are implicit messages communicating that you're dead and lost at sea, and you and everything you amount to are left unclaimed by the owner, and so you have been claimed by the Crown as its own property. Hang on in there, it just gets more crazy. The corpse orating, or corporation. The dead speak. You are a corporation. You have a diminished status and no rights. Capitas diminutio maxima and minima are implicit messages within the legal, banking, governmental and state systems which indicate that you are dead. This means you can be summoned from the dead to a hearing in a court where you convene to do business under Admiralty jurisdiction. You sit in a dock. You have left the land. You consent to being there. You confirm your identity, but because you don't know the rules of the game they are playing, you are strung up and take the blame. You are either an imposter trying to fraudulently claim on the Crown's property, or you become the trustee of the trust, who is the one entrusted with the responsibility, who must fulfill his obligations to the trust in seeing that the beneficiary gets the payout or the fine. If he does not do it, he will be in serious breach of trust, for which there are serious penalties. Prison. It's a very dirty game indeed. Check out the crown around the unicorn's neck and the chain just kind of draping around its body. It's natural to feel angry once you start putting together the pieces and seeing really what is going on behind the scenes. It's important not to fall into the trap of blaming anyone. It's a case of taking responsibility, taking back your power. While we did things like watching TV or, we just left other people to take up the responsibility. Abdicating responsibility. By leaving the system in the hands of others whom are not fit for purpose or qualified to take the roles they do, and by not holding them to account when things go wrong, we are neglecting to take full responsibility for our part of the deal, or in the relationship of being part of an electorate and a democratic system. Those whom have put themselves in power over many generations have certainly contrived and connived to bring about our apathy and disinterest. It suits their agenda very nicely. We are lulled into a false sense of security and do not pay full attention to what is going on. By allowing the system to take care of us and our responsibilities without check or balance, we have become children and are aligning ourselves to being taken care of by a nanny state. Democracy and voting. By consenting to a democratic system, you have in effect given away your rights as a human being. You have agreed to be governed, thereby abdicating all responsibility and leaving it to others to manage it for you. By being on the electoral register, you are consenting to being governed. Your tick box ballot paper is your power in that system. Removing all forms of consent for the system is demonstrative that you mean what you say and that you are an individual standing on your own authority. By not taking a public role, elect a role, i.e. by being on the electoral register,